Isaiah 11, 9 through 10. They will not hurt or destroy on all my holy mountain. The root of Jesse shall stand as a signal to the peoples.
We are called to be signals of peace in a world that longs for calm. We proclaim that peace is not passive. It is active, bold, and rooted in the knowledge of the Lord. We are peacemakers, proclaimers of the Prince of Peace.
We proclaim peace not only in our homes and communities, but across borders and oceans. We join with peacemakers around the world, believing that the Prince of Peace reigns over every land and language.
We light these candles, one for joyous hope and one for proclaimed peace, as signs that we are a people who believes peace is possible from the heart of our neighborhoods to the farthest reaches of the earth, and who make it real, and who live to make it real.
So we're going to be in Isaiah chapter 11, the passage we've heard now and seen on the video. And Isaiah 11, like Isaiah 2, which we looked at last week, are in some ways pictures of the kingdom of God. Images of this kingdom that are so vivid, some have even described the book of Isaiah as a fifth gospel. That has really stuck with me. These pictures of hope and now of peace. And here in Isaiah chapter 11, we have a number of almost parable-like pictures given to us of the kingdom of heaven. There's almost this kaleidoscope of different images to make this kingdom come alive. We see a forest. We see a zoo. We see a mountain and a sea. And in all these places, there's this grand reversal. There's this shift from what you would have expected to see, a transformation. There's movement from chaos to order. There's movement from violence to peace, from death to life. And this is where we find ourselves here in verse 1 of Isaiah chapter 11. You've already seen it a couple times. It says, "There shall come forth a shoot from the stump of Jesse, and a branch from his roots shall bear fruit." Forests are peaceful places. And it doesn't really matter what time of year you happen to be in a forest, whether it's a snowy winter day or the springtime when the leaves are starting to bud, or in the summer or in the fall when all the leaves have changed color. A forest is a peaceful place. But here in Isaiah chapter 11, verse 1 begins not with a forest, but with a stump. Something has happened to the trees. And the peace has been destroyed. And instead of a great forest, we're presented with this picture of a rotting stump. And so to understand that, we need a little bit of context. We need some background. What's going on here in Isaiah that can help us? Well, if you look at Isaiah chapter 6, there is a description there of the terebinth and the oak as images of Israel, and these trees are cut down. They are cut down because of pride and disobedience. And then, after this forest of Israel is chopped down, another forest grows up. And in Isaiah chapter 10, we're told this forest is the forest of Assyria. And that forest also is chopped down because of the same problem, pride. And so what's left is this picture of a land that was once a forest, a peaceful forest, now cut down, reduced to these smoldering stumps due to pride and failed leadership. And it kind of reminded me, as I studied this, of when I was a kid, my parents and my brother and sister and I took a vacation to Yellowstone National Park. And of course, we went there to see Old Faithful and Mammoth Hot Springs and all the things you see at Yellowstone. But this was 1989. It was the year after the great Yellowstone fire, if any of you remember that. There was a huge forest fire that swept through Yellowstone National Park, destroyed about a third of the forest. Almost 1 million acres of land were burned in 1988 in Yellowstone Park. And I was only 10 at the time, but I still kind of remember the image of looking out across the hills and seeing nothing but just hill after hill of burned stumps where there once was a forest. And I kind of see that as a picture here for what Isaiah is describing, a great forest cut down and burned because of the sin of pride. And yet the good news is that when a great forest burns, the seeds for future trees remain, and they fall into the ground, and then the ash and the soot make the soil more fertile, and new growth follows. And so Isaiah says that out of this stump of Jesse grows a new shoot, a green branch, and that branch bears much fruit. Jesse was the father of King David, which means a new king, even greater than David, is going to come forth from this stump. And this king is going to rule differently. This king will be unlike any other king. Instead of pride and disobedience, verse 2 gives the characteristics of this great leader. It says, "And the Spirit of the Lord shall rest upon him, the Spirit of wisdom and understanding, the Spirit of counsel and of might, the Spirit of knowledge and of the fear of the Lord." So this king who rises up from the stump of Jesse will be marked by a spirit of wisdom, a wisdom and understanding. And it's important to remember, wisdom is in some ways a virtue above the other virtues. It's the kind of crowning virtue because it requires that all the other virtues be in place, whether it's patience or prudence or diligence or respect. Wisdom is the virtue of maturity that takes all these strengths and applies them then to knowledge and to understanding and to leadership. And wisdom operates then with this restraint and this temperance. And most of all, the Bible says that wisdom operates with a healthy fear of God. Verse 3 describes this. And then through verse 5, "And his delight shall be in the fear of the Lord. He shall not judge by what his eyes see, or decide disputes by what his ears hear, but with righteousness he shall judge the poor, and decide with equity for the meek of the earth. And he shall strike the earth with the rod of his mouth, and with the breath of his lips he shall kill the wicked. Righteousness shall be the belt of his waist, and faithfulness the belt of his loins." So it sounds almost too good to be true. How can the king do all of this? But the key there is in verse 5. It says, "Righteousness shall be the belt of his waist, faithfulness the belt of his loins." And I was helped on this point by John Oswalt in his commentary. He says, righteousness and faithfulness will be at the very heart of this person's existence. And the English translations obscure the imagery here a little bit, but the sense is, in these characteristics of the Messiah, that the righteousness and the faithfulness being, it says, is the belt of his waist or the belt of his loins. It's like it's his most intimate garments or his underclothing, Oswalt says. They're that close to him. They're that much a part of who he is. Oswalt says, when you strip away everything else, what do you find? You find a continuing concern to be right with all that is right, and to be true to all that is true in God's universe. This is the core of true wisdom. It's an unflinching commitment to truth, no matter what the cost, and for a leader, it will be costly. So no other words, no propaganda, no manipulation, no spin. Instead, a commitment to perfect congruence and truthfulness in the ways of this king. And out of this comes peace. this promised peace. That this king is going to show that the only path to the lasting peace is going to take truthfulness, righteousness, and justice to bring the forest back to life. That any shortcuts to skirt this will only bring more destruction and smoldering stumps. So the Messiah's way of truthfulness is the way of peace. This is the forest. So we've been to the forest. Now let's go to the zoo. Let's visit the zoo. And that's where Isaiah takes us. But it's no typical zoo. Listen to this. The wolf shall dwell with the lamb. The leopard shall lie down with the young goat. The calf and the lion and the fattened calf together. And a little child shall lead them. Verse 7, the cow and the bear shall graze. And their young shall lie down together. And the lion shall eat straw like the ox. And the nursing child shall play over the hole of the cobra. And the weaned child shall put his hand on the adder's den. Here we have a zoo, but it's the most unusual of zoos. It turns out to be a zoo without cages. A place where all the animals can share the same space, living together in peace. And this picture that we're given of a child going into the reptile house. And there's a king cobra slithering across the floor where everybody walks. And the child runs up to it. And as the child approaches, the king cobra reels up and its wide hood spreads out. And the kid just touches its back and pets it without any harm. What's come over these creatures? Aren't they instinctual killers? What's with this lion eating grass? Lions can't survive on grass. And then you go into the petting zoo. And you know, the kids are all in the petting zoo, and they're getting handfuls of corn to feed to the sheep and the goats, and there's timber wolves running around with the sheep and the goats trying to get the corn out of the kid's hand. Then you go into a great hall at the center of the zoo. Inside there's a giant cage to the left where they keep the donkeys. And there's a giant cage to the right where they keep the elephants. And somebody's opened up the doors, and all of them are mingling in the middle. When the Messiah King comes, this branch from the stump of Jesse sits on the throne and rules, then the things that by nature should be hostile will be at peace with one another. So we've been to the forest, we've been to the zoo. Now we're given descriptions of a mountain and a sea. And these are a little briefer in what Isaiah says. But verse 9, they shall not hurt or destroy in all my holy mountain. For the earth shall be full of the knowledge of the Lord as the waters cover the sea. So we return to the mountain, which we looked at last week, the mountain where God will draw all nations unto himself. And we add to this picture a picture of the sea. And in ancient times, seas were understood as the place of chaos, a place of disorder. The sea was the boundary you did not cross, and evil things came from there. But Isaiah is saying in the last days, the earth is going to be full of the knowledge of the Lord as the waters cover the sea, that the good news of this reigning Messiah will reach all people, and it will overcome and subdue all the disorder and the chaos that surrounds us. That this knowledge of the Lord will bring everlasting peace. And this is reiterated in verse 10. In that day, this root of Jesse, who shall stand as a signal for the peoples of him, shall the nations inquire, and his resting place shall be glorious. He is a signal or a banner for all people. Nations are drawn to him. This is the leader that the people of the world need. Wisdom, humility, righteousness, justice, and peace. Now we started with a forest. And I'm going to end with a forest of a different kind. My family has always gotten a real Christmas tree for Christmas time. And I just read recently that more than 75% of Americans have an artificial tree now. But we still go for the real thing. And for many years, there's been this routine in my house, usually about the first week of December, where I pull the radio flyer wagon out of the shed and get the kids together, and we walk down Clark Street and take a turn onto Angola, and we go to Corey's Mulch and More, where he's got the Christmas trees out. And this year it was especially picturesque as the snow was falling and the kids are all marching in their boots. And they just have a blast going in among all those hanging Christmas trees. It's like a spinning forest. And they all like to try to pick out the one that they want most, and there's always a conflict about that. But it's just one of those Christmas traditions we have. And part of the annual tradition for me is the reverse bartering match that I get into with the guy who sells the trees. He knows I'm the pastor, and he likes to give me a big discount. I sure appreciate his kindness and his help in picking out the tree and his candy canes for the kids. And so I try to return the favor by giving him a tip. And so we have this funny back and forth that's kind of gone on for years now. And this year he one-upped me, and I couldn't beat him. Because, first of all, he offers me this really big discount on the tree. And I countered by saying, I'll accept half of your discount. And then he comes back and he says, does your church have a food pantry? I said, yeah, we have a food pantry. So then he named a price. He said, instead of giving me the money, take that money and go buy food for the food pantry. I said, you have a deal. Now, maybe I tell that story just to provide him with a little publicity for a local business so that I can get the last word on this bartering match. But I'm mostly thinking here about just the difference between the real and the artificial. And certainly, there's nothing wrong with an artificial Christmas tree. That's not my point at all. Celebrate Christmas all the same, with a real tree or not. But let's bring this back around to this matter of peace. Because there is a very big difference between real peace and artificial peace. The real peace, which is described here in Isaiah, whereas the artificial peace, that is something that tries to look like peace, but never lasts. As followers of Jesus, who is the Messiah King, we must become discerning about the peace that we pursue. And when it comes to peace, we can't settle for anything less than the real thing. Only Jesus, the true Messiah, can bring that peace into our hearts and into our world. Real peace comes at a great cost, and that's the thing I think we have to remember most, that Jesus gave his life on the cross so that we can be reconciled to God and to others. Whereas artificial peace is cheap. It's willfully blind to the conflicts that it perpetuates. Artificial peace is the kind that says it's peace for me, but maybe not for you. But real peace is something that we're drawn to. It's something that is not forced or imposed, but it's going back to that picture of the zoo. It's the peace that comes when the cages are open, not when the cages are all reinforced and given extra locks. But that peace that Jesus proclaims requires a deep change, a transformation. I mean, think about what this lion has to go through. He's been eating wildebeests all his life, and now he's chewing grass. What does God mean for us? What sort of change is he trying to work in our lives? This is the way of Jesus. And so in the Advent season that we are in, we are celebrating what Jesus is doing. And we're celebrating this around the world. We're celebrating this with followers of Jesus in every land and nation. All these churches coming together to celebrate the peace that God is making in our lives and in our communities, that this is the hope of the world. This is the real peace. And are we open to the possibility of this peace reigning in us today? And maybe even more incredible, are we open to the possibility of this peace becoming seen and known and experienced in real ways among us and beyond us into the world around us? Not imagined, but real. It comes as we share in the way of Jesus as his people.